Welcome to the Center Step Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Schuler. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, drop me an email and I'll send you more information. Just shoot an email over to podcast@centerstepracing.com. You'll get mentioned right here in the podcast, not in some sort of embedded overlay display ad where ad blockers can block that. No, you will get mentioned right here in the podcast. So shoot me an email if you are interested in sponsoring that. Very much appreciated if you would check that out. Definitely want to take a moment. My wife and I, we were up in Sonoma. So first off, I want to give a shout out to all the staff up there. Thank you so much for your hospitality. That was by far one of the best experiences I've had, working in the media with Speedway Media, and just the friendliness of everyone and how organized you guys were. Absolutely unbelievable. So I wanted to give a shout out to you guys. Thank you so much for having us. Can't wait to go next year. An absolutely beautiful track. And I'm hoping to get more involved as well. So definitely looking forward to next year already. First off, before I get too far into this podcast, I do want to take a moment right now and just give one quick shout out here. But if you don't know what happened out in Sonoma, Wendy Venturini was out jogging one morning, and apparently she was struck by a car. She works with the Performance Racing Network, or PRN. For those of you who listen to the races on the radio, you're very familiar with her already. But for those of you who aren't, she helps with some of the radio coverage with PRN. Apparently she suffered a skull fracture and a concussion of some sort. So definitely wanted to acknowledge that and just let you know, Wendy, that we are all praying for you and your family. We missed you at the track up at Sonoma, but definitely are hoping that you have a quick and speedy and full recovery. So with that said, let me just go ahead and start diving into the episode. Without further ado, I want to run some trivia questions. What I'll do is, at the beginning here, I will basically reveal the answers of last week's episode as far as the trivia questions go. So since this is the first episode, I'll go ahead and share some trivia questions. I'll also share them on my Twitter handles. You can follow me at JSchuler, that's JSCHUOLER, or you can go Center Step Racing without the G, and you can follow me on there and put your knowledge to the test with some of these trivia questions. So I got a few here. I've actually got quite a bit typed out, but I'm going to pick some of my favorites here and see what you guys can come up with here. So first off, with getting started out, who was the inaugural winner? Who was the inaugural winner at Sonoma? The second question I have is, besides Jeff Gordon, who is the only other driver to turn more than 2,000 laps at Sonoma? Besides Jeff Gordon. How many victories does Pontiac have at Sonoma? That'll be my third question. My fourth question here, what is the worst starting spot by a winner at Sonoma? What is the worst starting spot by a winner? And obviously, I mean that by the same race. How many different official names has Sonoma Raceway been called? So there's one name right there, so you know the answer is at least one. So don't mess that part up. But what are the other names, and how many of them has that track been called? And then my last trivia question, name 4 out of 5 drivers with multiple career poles at Sonoma. That does not have to be an active driver. Okay, it can be someone in the past, it can be someone current, but name 4 out of 5 drivers with multiple career poles, and I'll give all 5 next week in that episode. But with that said, those are my trivia questions, so a little bit more than normal, but definitely, since we're at a road course, and we don't go to road courses often, I figured I'd go a little bit more with the trivia questions. Go ahead and let me know what you think. Tag me on Twitter, I'll go ahead and post those on Thursday sometime and see what your thoughts are. So without further ado, let's dive right into this. So first off, I want to talk about the Cup race. That's obviously where I was at Sonoma with my wife. She was out taking pictures, and I was in a nice air-conditioned media center while she was out in the blazing heat, snapping some really amazing photos. You can go ahead and check those photos out right now, speedwaymediaphoto.com, and that will take you straight to the photo gallery, and you can see some of those pictures up there. Congratulations, Martin Truex Jr. for winning in the Cup Series at Sonoma. Justin Haley grabbing his first career win out at Gateway in the Truck Series, and Will Rogers for winning the K&amp West Series at Sonoma. So let's talk about the Cup race first. You know, if you guys don't notice, we obviously count the caution flags with the ends of the stages, stage 1 and 2. Had we not counted those cautions, this race at Sonoma in the Cup Series would have actually been the fewest cautions we've ever had at Sonoma, with only one, and that was when AJ Allmendinger misshifted coming out of 11 and then stalled up at the top of turn 2. So that's pretty interesting considering the fact that, you know, back in the day, a lot of these Cup drivers didn't have a lot of experience when it came to road course racing, and the newer generation has much more experience, a lot more practice with road racing. You also have a lot of technology now with video games like iRacing, NASCAR Heat, Gran Turismo, Forza, whatever it might be. A lot of these video games are now starting to take credit, I guess you could say, for helping develop a lot of these skills in these drivers. So it's pretty interesting to see that these guys who are usually only turning left and only used to turning left are now starting to get used to turning right just as much. So, but with that said, only one caution, and it was not due to an accident. Obviously, there were some off-track excursions and a couple people getting into a wall here and there, but not anything too crazy to cause a full course yellow. Obviously, the buzz. Let's just cut to the chase here. That call by Martin Truex and Cole Pearn and his team. Let's talk about that. First off, I want to kind of start sharing some thoughts as far as sitting in Martin Truex's seat. It doesn't matter how much of a veteran you are. When you're in that kind of situation, your nerves are going crazy. You watch Kevin Harvick go in for his final pit stop knowing you're not going back in, and you're staying out for the last 15, 20 laps or so, and you know he's going to be faster than you, but at the same time, you also know that you have a 30, 35, 40 second lead on Kevin Harvick. But with that said, you know that he's also going to be gaining 1-2 seconds a lap. Obviously he has to deal with lap traffic and also had to get by a few people in order to get into that second position to start hunting down and reeling in Martin Truex Jr. But at the same time, you have a pretty comfortable lead to where you pretty much have it in the bag, except if a yellow comes out. Now, as a driver, If you're a driver at that point and you don't believe in God, you definitely do for about 10 laps or so, because you're praying nonstop for no yellow to come out, because that's the only way you're going to win. Otherwise, you're a sitting duck. If a yellow were to come out, this race would have went back-to-back wins for Kevin Harvick. There's no way Clint Bowyer was faster than Harvick, but there also would have been no way for Truex to hold off Harvick, even if it came down to a green-white checkered. There's no way Harvick would have come into the pits. There's no way Truex would have been able to hold him off staying out. And, you know, like I said, had this race seen its fourth yellow flag for any kind of incident in those last 5-10 laps, let's say, this race would have been a lot different. And in Harvick's seat, you're in the exact opposite side of the coin. You're hoping for that yellow flag. You know you can't catch him and pass him, but at the same time, you're also thinking, you know, what if we didn't fall for that trick? What if we didn't pay it that close attention to what Truex's team was doing and fall for that little trickery? You know, in the media center after the race, Cole Pearn was asked quite a bit, you know, Was that on purpose? Did you do that? Did you make that call? Was that planned way ahead of time? And look, first off, no one's planning way ahead of time that you're only going to have one yellow flag aside from the stage cautions. No one's planning that you're going to have one yellow flag at a road course. Of all places, that's like trying to say, oh yeah, we're going to go to Martinsville and it's going to go caution free. Yeah, okay, whatever. No, they didn't plan that ahead of time. That was probably something they came up with. The crazy part is that Colt Pearn said in the media center that no, they didn't plan that. He said out in Victory Lane, they're not that smart to make audible calls like that or come up with code or whatever he said. However he said it. But then he tells NASCAR.com, yeah, we kind of did. We did mean to fake out the 14. Look, let me just make it simple for everyone. There's only 3 people that know the truth, okay? That's Truex, Pearn, and God, okay? Those are the only 3 people that truly knows if this was a trick or not. Either way, it was great to watch. It was great to see the crew chiefs get just as competitive as the drivers and try to get in each other's head. The other thing that I think about with this win by Truex is this definitely locks him in as that third title contender. And this has kind of been a debate between a few different shows. I've been listening to various videos, on Facebook and following people's tweets on Twitter and listening to a couple clips here and there from SiriusXM and the NASCAR channel and things like that. I really wasn't that confident yet that Truex was quite the third title contender yet. Definitely Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick, hands down, for sure. But I don't think Truex really showed enough strength yet to show that he was capable of being that third title contender to try to defend his title. That performance on Sunday absolutely locked that in. Not only does he have enough wins and enough bonus points to carry him pretty far into the playoffs, but that team, when they know they don't have the fastest car, but they can outwit their competition, they still find a way to be out in front. And that right there definitely, I feel, locks them in as that third title contender. And then the other part too I want to talk about is AJ Allmendinger. Look, you have one guy that's kind of become a Dale Earnhardt Jr., if you don't mind me using that example right now. If you're a Junior fan or were a Junior fan when he was racing, you had 4 races on your calendar that you always circled, okay? And for those of you who've been around the sport, you know exactly what tracks I'm talking about. It's the 4 restrictor plate races. It's Daytona and Talladega. Those were his backyard. He always ran good there, and he was always a contender for the win. He was always the one to watch. It's almost like when you race at your local track and that guy comes from across the states to race at your place, everyone looks at him like, okay, you're the one to beat right now. That's how everyone felt in the garage. When Junior's team showed up at Daytona or at Talladega, everybody was like, we're gonna beat him today. Right now, AJ Allmendinger is kind of like the Dale Earnhardt Jr., where he only circles 2 tracks on the schedule. And this year, maybe 3. But for Allmendinger and his team, they circle 2 tracks on the schedule. That's Watkins Glen and Sonoma. And now, obviously, we have the Roval, so that's another track for him to do well at. Obviously, I wouldn't say that's the same as a road course, but you are talking about a track that does require a lot of shifting, a lot of left and right, and a lot of maneuvering and, understanding the balance of the car, both shifting left and right. And AJ Allmendinger knows how to do that. So when you see him at Sonoma, that's one of his 2 chances to qualify for the playoffs. With the Roval being in the playoffs, he can't just go to that race and go, yeah, we're going to go win that one and contend for a title, because it'll be too late. There's no point in that. There's no point in going to the Roval without another win and not qualifying for the playoffs and say, yeah, we'll win that, aside from bragging rights of you won it. That guy wants to go out there and start competing in the playoffs. So when you see him do as well as he did in that first stage and start climbing up to the front, I thought he was going to be a contender for that win. And then all of a sudden you see something that he said in one of his interviews of, I've never missed a shift in 10 years. And he's totally right. You don't see those kinds of mistakes coming from AJ Allmendinger. You don't see someone who has grown up around road racing, who understands road racing better than any of those other drivers right now, miss a shift. That's like saying Dale Earnhardt lost a race because he couldn't see the air for 5 seconds. And that 5 seconds, someone else took advantage of him and got by him for the win. No. That doesn't happen. So when you see that emotion coming from AJ Allmendinger, that, I guess the best way I could say it is just depression of, I let my team down. It definitely becomes a lot more understandable, and it definitely becomes a lot more personal. I think AJ was the stronger man, where he flat out said, that one's on me, and he felt like he let his entire team down, because he feels like his entire team knows who he is as a driver, and knows that they've circled that day on the calendar as well. And yet now, here they are sitting in the garage a couple laps after the first stage with a blown motor because AJ missed his money shift. Instead of going from second to third, going from second to first, crossing the start-finish line. And it definitely hurts to see that. As a racer myself, I can understand that. I've had situations where my motor's gone and I've been up there with the front pack competing for the win, and boom, no more. Or the clutch goes out, boom, no more. It's tough. It's a tough one to bite, but you just gotta keep your head up and move forward to the next weekend. So, anyway, let me go ahead and go on to the next topic here. I want to talk about, Clint Bowyer quietly finishes in third. Not getting a lot of attention right now, but I'll tell you what, I know he won a rain-shortened race at Michigan, and obviously snagged up that win at Martinsville, grabbing that grandfather clock, but he's quietly starting to finish really well and consistently well. And I think he's becoming more of that threat for the fourth title contention. And I don't think Larson is. Here's why. NASCAR doesn't give points for where you start. Plain and simple. Larson said in one of his pre-race interviews that his team was focused primarily on race trim. The past few years, I guess he said that they were more focused on qualifying trim so they could get him up front, and that ruined their race. Okay, understandable. Yeah, okay. And he goes out and still grabs the pole, and I think this was actually a track record. Now, for those who have been around for a while, this technically is a track record, but specifically for this layout. So I want to make sure that was clear. I saw a couple people online saying this isn't the track record, blah, blah, blah. Rusty Wallace set this one, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you're right. You're technically correct. Rusty Wallace does have a faster speed and a faster time, but on a different layout. Sonoma has a few different layouts, and we have run a few different configurations at Sonoma, and Rusty Wallace does have a faster time on one of those other configurations, but on the one that we're currently running, Larson has the record for that one. But with that said, going back now with a comparison between Larson and Bowyer, look, Larson, he started well, that's great, but you realize he led the first two laps, and you never heard from him again. no one ever talked about Kyle Larson again for the rest of the day. He ended up finishing 14th. I don't know if anyone caught that. Maybe just his fans, and that's it. But you can't lead the first 2 laps and then fall back to 14th and then expect to be that 4th title contender. I'm sorry, that's just not how this sport works. Whether you have the playoffs or not, you can't just sit there and go, yeah, we're going to win the pole, set the qualifying record, and then fade back to 14th. Boyer, on the other hand, yeah, keep an eye on him. If he continues to string together these good finishes, heck, and if he does, he may even sneak in one more win, before we head into the playoffs. I didn't think he was going to, but now I wouldn't be surprised if he does. If that team can continue that trend that they're working on now, they're going to be a serious contender coming here in the future. So, with that said, a quick breakdown of the points for you guys. Right now, Kyle Busch is leading the regular season points over Kevin Harvick, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, and Martin Truex Jr. So I want you to keep those names in mind, okay? Now, check out this other comparison. Here's the playoff picture right now. If we were going to the playoffs right now, you have Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., Clint Boyer, and Joey Logano. That's your top 5. Oh, and by the way, Austin Dillon is still 6th in the playoffs because he's the only other driver to win this year. Now, let's take that thought and go back to AJ Allmendinger. That makes AJ's missed shift even more disheartening for that team. Just think about it this way. Had AJ gotten that win at Sonoma, he would be 7th in the playoff picture right now. And with only 10 races left before the cutoff, that is a fantastic position for that team. That's like saying, someone like Matt DiBenedetto got a win and he's 7th seed going into the playoffs. First off, that team, let's say for example, that team like AJ Allmendinger, a team like Matt DiBenedetto, they would absolutely dream of qualifying for the playoffs. Okay? There are multiple races going on each weekend. It's not always who's going to grab the checkered flag first. Okay? And I'll talk a little bit about that later, but there are other races going on. Okay? And these are those other little races that you've got to find. These are those other little races that you kind of have to keep an eye on. Because once you do, you start seeing a whole lot more than what's just shown on the camera when you're watching on Fox or NBC. You start seeing a whole bunch of teams start competing against each other in many different ways. Okay? So when you see someone like Eric Jones, who got a top 10, Chase Elliott, who got his first career top 5 at a road course, and then you got someone like Matt DiBenedetto, who, by the way, started on that final restart, I believe, in the 35th position, and then finishes up in 17th place. Those right there, those kinds of finishes are wins for those teams. Those are finishes that those teams, some of them can't even dream of. But then you see that kind of performance out there, and you can see multiple races going on in the same event. It's absolutely insane. So, with that said, that's your playoff picture right now. So, not sure who else is going to win this year, but if someone can disrupt this Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex show going on and sneak in a win, they're going to get themselves in a very good seed going into the playoff picture. So, want to talk a little bit about the truck race now. Justin Haley obviously scoring his first career win at Gateway. Congratulations to you, kid. That was a great race. Now, Justin is not, a stranger to the front pack. Earlier this year, he did finish a runner-up at Daytona. He was 3rd at Dover in Texas, so he's already secured some great finishes earlier this year. And then on top of that, too, you have another up-and-coming kid, Noah Gragson, who was cruising to his second win of the season until about 7-8 laps to go when that tire let go. And he could have secured himself a really nice spot in the playoffs for the Truck Series. But obviously, he'll have to wait for another race for that win. But Justin Haley, great job with that truck win. Awesome work there with you and your team. Also, some really cool news. Brett Moffitt, now he wasn't sure if he was going to be racing at Chicagoland. So it's pretty cool when you see someone struggling like that with sponsorship, and is able to secure some new sponsorship. He announced that on some of his social media platforms. He has 2 wins on the season already, Atlanta and Iowa. So he's already secured, he's already locked in for the playoffs pretty much. And in a really good position to go for that championship. So that would have been absolutely disheartening had he not been able to go out there and run for that championship. All right, so I have a section in my podcast that I call Exhibition Racing, and I use this section to talk about some of the lower division races, or maybe a race outside of our series. So something like ARCA or K&N, or maybe talk about some of the Formula 1, Formula E, or IndyCar, MotoGP, motocross, supercars, whatever I see on the news that I think you guys should know about. But I want to talk about that K&N race because I saw it on Saturday. I've raced with Will once in karting. Great kid. And to see that kind of talent not just beat and not just race well against 5 Cup drivers, but absolutely dominate the field and pull away from all of those Cup drivers. I mean, none of those guys had a chance against him. Once he was able to get by someone, he would just pull away. It's almost like he was just on his own league. And when it comes to road racing, I think, and I asked him this in the media center, and he definitely confirmed my thoughts. But I asked him if last year's help with having Kevin Harvick as a teammate helped kind of give his team and give him that boost of confidence that he needed for this win. And absolutely, he hands down credited almost every bit of this win to having Kevin Harvick as a teammate. So when you have him come out this year to back up that experience from last year into beating 5 Cup drivers, you're talking about William Byron, Alex Bowman, Eric Jones, Eric Almirola. You're beating names like this. You're doing pretty well. So, great job out there, Will. It was fun to watch you go out there and race, and it was fun to watch you celebrate with your team. So good work there, and keep up the good work in that K&N West Series. Another thing with the K&N West Series, Haley Deegan was out there as well, and she actually got into a little bit of trouble during the race, but she was able to stay pretty well composed and got another top 10 finish. And she actually is, I believe, the only driver right now who has all top 10 finishes in the K&N West Series. So she's doing pretty well in that series. All right, so we're going to wrap up this podcast now, but I want to finish off with a section I call my overdrive section. So this will be a green flag, white flag, checkered flag finish. So the green flag is just to give some shout outs to drivers that got some great finishes that probably weren't expecting those good finishes. So I'll use that to discuss that topic. My white flag lap is just to celebrate some birthdays and then look at this week or this upcoming race in history and kind of share some cool thoughts there. And then my checkered flag finish is just what I'm looking forward to this upcoming weekend's races. So with that said, here's Overdrive. Let's get started. Green flags waving in the air. Great finishes by these guys. Again, Chase Elliott with his first top 5 in a road course. Great job with that team. Also, if you think about it too, Hendrick Motorsports had 3 drivers start in the top 8. They're definitely starting to see some improvement. So, and it's coming up on the second half of the season. So keep an eye on that Hendrick stable. we're going to see some more of those good finishes coming up here. I can feel it. Eric Jones, obviously getting a lot of experience from that K&N West race, finished 6th on Saturday in that race, and I think a lot of that experience helped him carry over a good performance on Sunday, kept the car clean, kept it on the track, finished 7th. Great job, Eric Jones. Matt DiBenedetto, I said it earlier, started 35th on that final restart, fought his way all the way up to 17th. Fantastic job, Matt. You're talking about a guy who takes a 30th or 25th place car and puts it inside the top 20. Fantastic drive by you. All right, and as we come around turn 4, we're seeing the white flag wave in the air. It's time to celebrate some birthdays and look at this weekend race in history. First off, we are coming up to Chicagoland. Yes, that is true. It's not a mistake. Yes, I do know it was the playoff opener before. Now that belongs to Vegas, but we are coming up to Chicagoland. Now, you remember in 2004, the infamous big orange ball going across the front stretch. I believe it was during qualifying. Yes, that is the same track at Chicagoland. We're heading over there. Also, on June 26th, that was Tony Stewart's final win at Sonoma, and oh my gosh, how can you guys ever forget that race? Getting punted and slightly overdriving, but getting a little rub and a little shunt by Denny Hamlin in turn 7 and then hunting him all the way down to turn 11. Denny Hamlin makes one mistake. Stewart takes full advantage of it, pinches him and shoves him into the wall, coming out of turn 11 to get that win and his final win at Sonoma. So pretty cool memories over on at those races. Happy birthday, Natalie Decker, on the 25th. Matt Tift, Steve Boyd, happy birthday on the 26th. And Jeff Burton and Martin Truex Jr., happy birthday this Friday on the 29th. So celebrate well. I know Truex is definitely celebrating already. Having some extra wine probably out from Sonoma. And then as we come out of turn 4, here's the checkered flag. What am I looking forward to next weekend as far as the racing action? We're back to a triple header, baby. We got the trucks, we got the Xfinity, and we got the Cup boys all in one weekend. So sit back, enjoy the racing, check out NASCAR.com, SpeedwayMedia.com, check out the weekend schedule. Also note that we are switching over to NBC as Fox has completed for the season. So make sure you have your DVR set correctly on the right channel if you are recording any of the races so you can watch later. Thanks so much for taking a listen, everyone. We'll be back next week to talk about Chicagoland. Other than that, hope to hear from you guys soon about those trivia questions. Follow me on Twitter at JSchuler or at Center Step Racing, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.